Hello, everybody. I am ducking down to Marty's height here. And thank you for coming today. My name is Patty Spencer. Jim Murnick and I are their programs directors. And we welcome you all here, the Zoomers and the folks at the Lucky Lab. Thank you. I'd like to thank Adre and the Lucky Lab. She's our server today. Often tip well. And let's see, any new folks here tonight in the Lucky Lab? Maybe one? Yeah, make sure you say hello to any new folks. Hi there. Yeah, how about any board members here? Current board members here? Couple, okay, great. So I have three speakers they're just gonna give a couple of announcements before we start with our main programming. So why don't I turn the stage over here to Gay Lewis, our librarian, and then I'll come back to you in a few minutes.
Hello, I have over on that table a small selection of some of the library books that we have in our OOPS library. If you want to know more about our OOPS library, you can go onto our website, and under the Learning tab, there's a link to the library. Our entire library is online, so you can see what we have. You can check books out online and contact me, and I'll find a way to get the books to you. And if you want any of the ones I brought tonight, feel free to check them out, and I'll help you if it's your first time, if you don't know what to do. I just wanted to highlight a couple of books that we have in our library that are new. This one is brand new, our newest. It's called Paddling the Salish Sea. It's hot off the press. It's a mountaineer book, and it is absolutely beautiful. It highlights 80 trips in the Puget Sound, the San Juan Islands, the Olympic Peninsula, and southern British Columbia. And each trip is illustrated. It's a beautiful book. Each trip is illustrated with a color photo, just to get you in the mood. It has information on how to get to the launch site, where to launch, all the alternative launch sites that there might be. There's a map. And it also gives you alternative routes to take. So once you launch, there are several different choices that you can make, and things to be aware of. It's very thorough and beautiful, and it'll give you a lot of ideas of places to paddle in those areas. And then a little bit closer to home is this one. It's called Southwest Washington Paddle Trips, and it was donated to the club by the author Alan Fritz. It's a self-published book, and it has trips in the Long Beach Peninsula, Willapa Bay, the Pacific coast of Washington, and the Columbia River. And for those of you who are going on the Grays Harbor event, you might want to check this out and get an idea of the kinds of things that are going to be offered. For each trip, he gives you a color photo of the launch site, some of the things that you might see. He gives you a map. He gives you information that you need to know about the launching. And it's very thorough. It's a beautiful book. So anyway, these are the two new books that we have in our library, and you're welcome to check them out tonight or at any other time in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gay. Next up, we want to hear from Janelle Lehman-Ross about some really cool events coming up. Thank you.
Tomorrow night, everybody repeat, tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m., 9:30 p.m., registration opens for Grays Harbor. So, opens for Grays Harbor. So, we've got a number of TOs, and that's great. But we could use some more TOs. So, when you're registering and the event fills up, make sure to get on the waiting list. And you don't pay when you're on the waiting list. If we get more TOs for the trip, we'll open more slots. So waiting list is a good thing if you don't get on. So I sent out a couple of emails, I think yesterday, about how to register. So if you're new, make sure to practice. Log into your account and practice, I don't know, refreshing? Because right at 9:30, I flip the switches and sometimes you have to refresh your screen. Okay, so, and then you'll see a green registration button. Okay, so that's the first date to know about. Second date. Thank you, Joseph. March 20th. Say after me, March 20th, a Thursday. And what time? 30 p.m. Yes, that's when general registration will open for Cascade Lakes. So the same qualifications, definitely use a wait list because that's a few months out. People sometimes sign up and need to drop out. So do use a wait list if the event fills up. Okay, last date for this meeting. All right, repeat after me, April 3rd. And that's a Thursday at what time? 30 p.m. And that is going to be the opening for registration for the Southern Coast, which, Steve, where are we staying again? Bullard's Beach. Yep, State Park. Yep. And that's going to be another fabulous trip. That one is in the middle of July. Grays Harbor is Memorial Day weekend. Cascade Lakes is the middle of June. Solstice. Woohoo. All right, that's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you. We got one more quick speaker. But I want to point out before I bring him up that, you know, if you folks out here in the room or the folks on Zoom have ideas about really cool programs that you'd like to hear more about, contact programs@oopskayak.org. That'll lead you right to Jim and I, and we can check it out for you. So I want to bring up Bill Scheck, who is going to talk to us about the Kids Fishing Derby real quick and how we could possibly get involved to help.
I come from clear across the river in Vancouver, where we have a kids fishing derby that's been going on for close to 40 years. I just looked it up, you know, what is the biggest fishing derby in the United States? And I found one that said they had between 800 and 1,200 kids. We have between 400 and 800 special need events or special needs clients on Friday, and we limit it to 2,000 kids on Saturday, and we've been doing it for 40 years. So what I have is a need. Dan here, you want to come and speak a little bit? Well, he gets over here. We do have flyers on the back table with us of the work days, but we came with a special plea for voters for Dan.
Watch yourstep there, man. A lot of cords and stuff upstairs.
We install nets to keep the fish near shore so the kids have a decent opportunity to cast for them, because this is to teach them some fishing skills. The nets are held up by buoys like this. And when an overcast occurs, the hook catches on the line, and that's the end of the kids fishing, because they only have 45 minutes to catch their 2 fish, because after they get hooked up here, we got to break them off. We found a way to alleviate that, which is to put covers over these buoys, that they're floating covers. And right now I'm the guy who canoes out and puts them on there. I canoe out and I have following me about 25 feet of buoys, of net covers. And I open them up and put them over these buoys. So, and then I put them on zip ties through the net so that they stay on. And when the overcast occurs, it's dragged right over and where the fish are, right out the net. And it just takes a little bit and they get a nice bite. It's taken me 2 days to do this because there's 800 feet. And what I am asking for is for somebody to help tow these lengths of buoys out, covers out to me. You'd have one of these attached to your kayak. And this is like a brush grabber. And you just grab onto one of the ends and then paddle out and let it, when you get near me, let it go. And I'll take it from there. And okay.
Okay, yeah, so it'll be, on this form, we'll be putting the nets in on Wednesday, April 10th. And so we can put those covers on Wednesday and Thursday. It's just a piece of that plastic corrugated cardboard type stuff you see wrapped around trees to prevent the deer. We put half that over the top of the net. And the thing is, most of us that I know and in the fishing clubs, we all have like 20-foot boats and they frown on us putting them in that pond. It's for, yeah, kids. So thank you, and come see us at the back if you have any questions.
Yeah, we'll put that maybe in the chat or look on the listserv. I think I saw an announcement about this event in the listserv, so check there too for more information. Klein Line Fishing Derby, Google that. Okay, now for the man you've been waiting for. We've got Marty Martinez, one of our own hoopsters who I'm sure you've all met and loved. Marty is a former United States Coast Guard search and rescue crewman. He started using VHF radios in 1977 and handheld radios in 1997. In the late 90s, Marty began using GPS units. Marty has personally owned and regularly used 3 different brands of VHF radios. He knows from personal experience that having and using VHF radios saves lives. So make welcome, Marty. Martinez, and by the way, save questions till the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that nice introduction, guys. So let me just say, first off, what this is not. I'm not going to teach you how to use your radio, right? Because there are several different kinds of radios. When we go camping or on a trip, we'd be happy to walk you through your individual radio. But tonight I'm going to focus on the features that are common to all of the better radios, right? And it can get a little overwhelming. So we'll kind of find out what are the priorities for you. And that's going to vary with each one of you. So why do we use radios? Stay safe, connected on the water. And how we're going to use them for effective communication when we're talking to each other as a pod or to reach out to the Coast Guard, okay? So we're going to talk about the importance of them and why having one on your person and not in your boat, but on your person, and how to use them effectively. And I'm going to give you kind of a topic of what's going to be covered in this. Why do you use a VHF radio? It's reliable communication. And there's a caveat to that, is if you take care of it and you charge it and you know how to turn the thing on, it's very reliable. We laugh, but I've been kayaking with some of us that they don't know how to turn the radios on. They've never been turned on before. That makes as much sense as having a life jacket in your forward hatch. Right? Okay. We're going to cover access to emergency channels, channel 16 for distress calls. This is important. I see people misusing channel 16 all the time. I saw it in my professional life as a Coast Guardsman, and I see it even today. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about communicating with other boaters, not only other kayakers, but ships, bridges, locks, other boaters, people on land. we're going to talk about GPS and enabled. If your radio is GPS enabled, how to look for that, how to set it up, how a GPS actually works. Okay. And one thing that's fairly new on the scene are radios that are Bluetooth compatible. Okay. I see a lot of folks using cell phones, and you think, well, I have a cell phone. I'll just use my cell phone instead of a VHF. I don't need it. Do these float? No. Not worth a darn. Are they waterproof down to 3.5 feet for half an hour? Probably not, right? So it's better if you have one of these, right? This poses its own problems, right? Can anyone tell me what the problem with having this inside of one of these might be? Can't get to the buttons, it fogs up. Yeah, so, yes.
That bag dies after less than 2 years and your phone will short out and you buy a new.
Yes, so good point. So this bag will fail after a couple of years, or if you don't zip it up exactly right every time, or if you get sand in the seal, it's not going to work. So you got to check it before you use it. But here's a little hint that I want to share with you guys. If you take nothing away from this, how many of you guys deal with Amazon? You buy stuff, they always include these little desiccant packets. In my bag, is whether it's my phone bag or my dry bag, I never throw those away. Pop them in there. And here's why. We mentioned that I've been through 3 radios. It wasn't because I got tired of the color of them. It's because they failed. I had them in things like this or like this. And I took it out maybe to do something with it with my wet hands. I put it back in the bag without the desiccant. It's sitting in the sun. That water droplet turns into steam. These are waterproof, they're not steam proof. So the steam gets inside of the electronics and on the screen, just like when your windows go bad in your house, right? The double pane, same thing happens here. That's why you use these. So when you get them in your Amazon package, stick them inside of a Ziploc, set them in a drawer, and use these, okay? So before we change, a couple of things. Why do you use a radio? Safety, rescue, right? That's one of our main reasons. So I want to share a story with you guys. I hope I don't get choked up about this. We mentioned that I used to be in the Coast Guard. I was a search and rescue crewman. I was a boat engineer in Destin, Florida. We had a 41-foot utility boat, and I say had, and I'm going to explain that in a second. Can you guys see this? Can everyone online see this? Okay. This is a picture of the boat that I was on. We commissioned the Coast Guard Station Destin and this boat. I was the first boat engineer on this boat. And when I cycled off of this station in January 12th, my replacement, a young boat engineer, was out on a call. They had responded to a Mayday call on Channel 16. That's something we're going to talk about here in a little bit. In 18-foot seas on a boat that's not designed for that. That's like being in a canoe, right? The boat capsized. My replacement was killed. The boat capsized, ended up on the jetty. It got a wave. The engine shut down, capsized, and they got pushed into the forward cabin and they broke the windows out and then tried to swim. And my replacement he was overcome by hypothermia. This is in Florida. So radios, Channel 16, using them effectively is very important to me, right? And using Channel 16 is not to shoot the bull. It is when you need help. And I want you to understand how to use the Mayday, the Securite, the Pon-Pon. We'll talk about that in more detail, okay? Before we get too far along into this, what I'm going to cover is very intimidating. These radios have a bunch of buttons and they will do 1,000 different things, right? You can almost talk it to the heavens with these. It's crazy, right? But it's a tool. It's a tool, not much different than this. These are more alike than they are different, okay? Except this doesn't have batteries. And you ask, why? This tape measure, how many of you ever used a tape measure? Okay, you know there are about a different dozen things you can do with a tape measure. You can measure a circle. You can make a circle with a tape measure. You can measure inside diameter. You can measure, or not diameter, distances on the inside. You can measure outside. There are markings on here every 16 inches, right? And it's colored red. 16 inches, right? For stud spacing, there's a one at 19.2 inches. Can anyone tell me what that's for? Wow. Yes. So, okay. And then you mentioned 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. The lines on here are different lengths for a 1/16, 1/8, quarter, half, and a 1 inch. Not only that, there's a whole bunch of information on the back about weights and sizes and all kinds of stuff, right? How many of you guys knew about all these features on a tape measure? Okay, there's a, really? Wow, amazing. So you guys are gonna be a whiz with a radio. Okay, so the bottom line with that is there's a lot of features that you don't use, you don't have to use. As long as you can measure a few inches or a couple of feet with this, that's half the battle, right? Same thing with this radio, if you know how to turn it on. And maintain it. And charge it, and turn it off when you're finished, okay? So we mentioned talking to other other kayakers. So I have a whistle here, right? The reason for this whistle is because as kayakers, when we're kayaking in a pod, we should all be line of sight, correct? We shouldn't be a mile apart, okay? These things are good for line of sight, about 2.5 miles, because these things don't bounce off the clouds like UHF. It's line of sight. Not only that, your radio's that far off the ground. So you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be standing up in your kayak when you're calling somebody, right? Or you may be in the water. So your line of sight's going to be maybe a mile, if even that. Or if there's land between you and someone you're trying to communicate with, no bueno, right? So you want to be aware of that. Line of sight. A good radio will have GPS. If your radio that you're using, that you're carrying on you for emergency use, doesn't have a GPS feature, it's not much better than one of these walkie-talkies from Costco. Can anyone venture a guess why I say that? Where are you? Yes, because if you have one of these and it's got the GPS and you've done what you should be doing with these things and registering them, as soon as you push this little button here on the side, right there, and you hold it for 3 seconds, the Coast Guard, we're no longer line of sight because this is using a digital signal, right? They will find you and they will come to your location within about a foot, right? So it's important, it's imperative that you program your MMSI number. Can anyone tell me what the MMSI stands for? Mobile Maritime. There you go. Very good. Yes. So you want to register them. You can do it for free on Towboat USA, or you can pay $25. I think it's a little bit easier is to get it registered on Boat US, right? And you can do it all online. If you buy a used radio, it's registered to somebody else or to another vessel. You need to make sure that you change that. Depending on the radio, sometimes you can take it to West Marine or contact the supplier and they will just send you a code and that'll allow you to change the MMSI number, right? So you want to make sure you do that because if you bought this radio from me and I gave you a really good deal on it and you didn't reprogram it, they'd be looking for a Marty Martinez, right? With my address and my kind of boat. And if they wake me up in the middle of the night, I'm going to be pissed. Okay. Another feature it has is it has weather monitoring. Have any of you guys ever used that feature on these? Even the low budget dumb radios will do that, right? So that's a plus, but still, okay. If you get a radio with GPS, most of them will allow you to establish waypoints. This is the key. How many of us in here are TOs, right? If any of you ever kind of got a little lost when you're trying to find your way back to where you put in, or a lunch spot or something like that, if you've got, that's why we paddle out a little ways, we turn around and we say, oh, what does it look like when we left? So this allows you to put in, to mark where you started from, okay? Or even your car, or your routes along the way, even before you start your trip, okay? Choosing the right radio, okay? There are a bunch of different brands out there. There's Icon, there's Atlantis, there's the HX, this is Standard Horizons. I've owned, like I say, 3 different brands, and for me, this is my go-to. The price has dropped. You can get one of these now for about $200 or less. I saw them last week for $196. A lot more features in this. This is 10 years old. Okay. So how many of you are in favor of a floating radio? Yeah, that's kind of nice. But if you're relying on that, you've already lost. So you want to tether it. You want to tether it to your boat because the boats float away once in a while. As much as we're taught to hang on to our boats and our paddles, not so much. If you got a choice between hanging on to your radio, your boat, or your paddle, my radio's, it's gone. And if it's floating, it's black, unless you've done what I've done. I don't store it in the bag. It's just, that was the old me. Because these things are waterproof, remember? Right? They float. A lot, yeah, it's Solus tape, right? So a lot of these radios, and I'm thinking of the Icon myself, when it goes in the water, it floats like this. That's it. And it's black. You're not going to see it. Don't ask me how I know that. Okay. Okay. This one floats like this. Okay. The other advantage is you can program this. This is one of those many features that I was telling you about. You can program this when these 2 contacts right here see water, it automatically turns on a light. I can make it into an SOS strobe. I can make it into a solid light, right? For like reading my map, whatever I need. So now I've got a flashlight with me. I also have an emergency strobe when it sees water. Those are things that you want to look for, right? And you want to tether this to your life jacket, right? Okay, GPS integration. So when I turn this radio on, I push the on button. It's going to come on, and it's going to, can you guys see this? Okay. Okay, it's going to give my MMSI number on there that's unique to this radio. Nobody else in the world has that, right? It means that I programmed this in. If I push this little button right here, in about 20 minutes, half an hour, we're going to have a helicopter flying overhead. That would be a bad move, okay? Don't even have to say a thing. Don't even have to call Mayday. It's right there, right? So I recommend that. And if you're looking at this, you can see it shows this is on channel 16. And directly below that are my GPS coordinates. So I can give that to the Coast Guard. I can give it to Joe Schmo Boater. I can give it to these fishermen over here. And if they're near and they want to help me and share their fish with me, they can come right to my location. And if they have a radio similar to this that has the AIS function, it'll actually tell them where I'm at. And they can navigate right to me. Okay? So DSC, this is very important. This is the digital selective calling. That's what the Coast Guard uses to get a hold of you. That's how they know that you are who you say you are. MMSI is your registration, right? That is, depends if you're in international waters, you would register your MMSI in your radio with the FCC, right? And then like Canada, we are not allowed to use these in Canada. Did you guys know that? No, you cannot use them there. It's a pretty stiff fine. Now, many of us have, but you're not supposed to, okay? There's a misconception also that you can't use these things on land. Okay, so that's wrong. The law was changed in 2016. So if you're on the water, let's say on your dock, because when you are on the water, that's not the time to do your radio check. It's a little bit late. So when you're doing your briefing at the water's edge, you can do your radio checks. You don't radio check with the Coast Guard on channel 16. Get on channel 69, our channel. You can get on channel 9 and ask another boater in the area, right? How many of you guys have used these radios before? Excellent. So we're going to do a radio check, and I'm going to do one with, let's say, Steve, and he's right over there. What should I do on channel 69 before I do my radio check? Sorry? Key the mic, yes, but there are different power levels on here, right? Because this is like the old party line in the old days when you dial and everyone can listen in. That's the way this thing works. So if I'm on 1 watt of power, it's going to limit someone 2 miles away isn't going to hear my conversation. So if I'm communicating within my pod, I'm going to be on 1 watt or maybe 2 watts, but certainly not on 6. Some of these kind of radios peak out at 6. Most of them are 5 or 6, right? So check your power setting on these. Always check your power settings. Now, you're in the deep soup. You got a problem. You got to get a hold of the Coast Guard, or you want to get out and reach and contact someone. Then you switch to high power. Okay. You want, and it'll say low, medium, and high. That's the 6 watts. You would contact the Coast Guard on channel 16. And then they'll have you switch probably to channel 22 because they want to keep 16 clear. And you go ahead and stay on your 16 watts. But the general communications, low power. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. Let's see. Oh, here's another real one. Most radios don't come with a spare battery pack. Okay. The standard Horizons do. This is a spare battery pack. It uses alkaline batteries. Do you guys see anything unique about this? No? Yeah, so what I have on here are little pieces of vinyl tape that I pull off when I need this because that keeps the contacts from completing the circuit. Have you guys ever pulled a battery out of an old flashlight and it's all corroded and rusty? Okay. So there have been instances in this club where people have wanted to use a radio and the batteries were either dead or corroded and they didn't work in an emergency. I keep this inside of one of those Daisy seal meal things, you know, inside of here with the batteries. I check it every year. And I have those little tabs on there. And I have a date on here. Inspected August 1st, 24. Now I'll check it again this year before the season goes. I have a meter and I actually check the voltage, make sure they're nice and clean. But you want to do that. If your radio doesn't have a spare battery pack like this, spend a few bucks and get a spare battery pack. Make sure it's charged always. Okay. Now I mentioned strobe with water activation. I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you can see I've got to do this. I'm blind in one eye and can't see out the other. Pretty much. That's a strobe. That kicks on if I can do it manually, or it'll kick on if I'm in the water. Right? That's a real plus. If your radio doesn't have that, I'd get one that does. And that little annoying beeping sound, you can even program that in or out if you like. Okay. Next slide, please. Understanding the VHF channels. Channel 16 is distress and hailing. Their Coast Guard is trying to get people not to use it for hailing, right? Hailing is not the stuff that falls from the sky. Or when you degrease to someone, you say, oh, hell no. No, that's not what that is. That's for calling somebody. And and you don't use channel 16 for radio check, right? You use channel 69. Okay, channel 9, non-commercial communications. That's the preferred hailing channel. That's a channel that if I wanted to just, I'm on the Columbia by myself, which I don't usually do, I would reach out to a boater and ask for a radio check there, right? Okay. Weather channels for updates. Have you guys ever used, has everyone here heard the weather channels? See what they sound like? Is there anyone who has not? Oh, good. So I'm not gonna, you haven't? Well, then, let's see what we can do here. Yeah, most everyone will have 9, boaters will have 9 on. Or I'm not sure if CETO is still doing this. You can get on one of the 20s, like 20 or 21 or 23, and do a radio check there. And they listen. But again, they got to be within range. Okay. It's line of sight. I listened to this yesterday during the storm.
Clear. Temperature 47. Wind north at 3.
Got to turn this off now. Hang on a second. To be honest, I just listen until I hear the area that it comes to me. It may take a couple minutes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Channel 69, commonly used for oops. And you see how my radio says oops on it? That's something I could put Dunkin' Donuts on there if I wanted to, right? You can program that yourself. I mentioned your power settings. If you look at the button in the center, that's called the volume button, and right there it's set to high. Right, that's gonna be where I'm gonna go next. The radio actually right now though is on low. If you look at just above 69, you'll see it's on the USA frequency, or you can choose Canada. I'm in USA, and it's in low power mode. This radio will last about 11 hours in this mode. Okay. The scroll just where it says weather, high, MOB. MOB is man overboard. And then directly below those are those little buttons with lines on them are called soft keys. If I wanted to, let's say, identify a man overboard, I would push the button on the far right and it would mark that spot for me. So I could always come back to it, right? Now, if there's a bunch more stuff in there, using the right and left arrow, I would push that and it scrolls all kinds of stuff across the bottom, right? Now, while I'm looking at this, how many of us paddle with these in the wintertime? Okay. So this is on here and it's burr cold outside. You got to pull your hand out of here and manipulate your radio, right? How good are you guys at controlling your boat in nasty conditions with one hand on your paddle? Probably not very good. Something to think about, right? How many of us use these? Again, not a very easy push. I see a lot of us, like myself, that are damn near blind. I can't paddle with these. They get salt spray, not any good. Or I'm wearing these. They look nice. But a lot of these radios, they have polarized lenses on here. And if you're not holding it just right, or the sun's not hitting right, all you're going to see is a black screen. And I can't read the screen. I always carry with me in my life jacket a spare pair of readers so I can read this, because those are useless. Okay, so if you guys do have a radio, I'm going to challenge you to go out and actually try that, right? I see a lot of folks using a radio like this or like this, right? The best way to use a radio where it's very clear is off to the side, so you're not blowing on it like this. That's very common, because all I hear, what I'm listening to is this, right? Very garbled, okay? The other thing that happens when people are using radios is they start talking and push the button. Pon, pon, like pon, 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 pon. I heard one pon. And then they finish, and they usually end in one of two ways. Over and out, which is like saying hello and goodbye, means nothing, right? So out means you're finished. Speaking of that, I wish we would use that in our text messages, because whenever I'm texting with somebody, it's like it just goes on and on and on. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not a texter, right? I hate to text. So much like texting, keep it brief, to the point, and then end it, right? Because you just don't want to keep going on forever, okay? So when you finish, you say out, done. And the person you're talking to says out. They may say switching back to channel 9, out, right? Okay. Let's see, next slide, please. Okay, so basic VHF radio, again, very high frequency. You turn it on, and a lot of them is you push the button, like I did with mine. It comes on.
Late tomorrow evening. Impacts above 22.0 feet. Expect minor flooding and
Adjust the volume, adjust the squelch, right? And the way the squelch works, can I, let's see. Oh, and the push to talk button is, for these radios, is on the right. Okay, and then you've got a lock button, which is important. If you got it in your life jacket and you're monitoring a station, put it in your lock, right? And it, okay, one more important thing is these radios, the GPS has to be programmed on. If not, when you turn your radio on and the GPS has not been turned in the on mode where it's monitoring it, you will get a beeping sound. And it'll warn you that it's not on, right? So you want to be aware of that, because in an emergency, if your GPS is on and you're not familiar with how to go into settings and turn it on, you've lost precious time, okay? So make sure your GPS is on. Okay, does everyone know what GPS is and how it works? You do. Anybody else that doesn't? Okay, so the United States has, can anyone tell me how many satellites we have? No, not that many. There are 32 satellites, 24, that's it. And Russia maintains a few as well, but we don't count those because you can't depend on them. No, we have 24 satellites. We have 8 spares that are in geosynchronous orbit around the Earth. And what they do is we use at least 3 of them, and they pinpoint and triangulate a spot on the Earth's surface or in the air and tell us exactly where we're at. That's how those things work, right? They're in orbit all the time, right? And everyone uses them across the world. That's how planes are controlled, boats, everything, right? They have done a lot of, they've opened it up considerably in the recent years. Before, you would be maybe 20 feet or further from your actual location. Now you can get down within a foot of where you're at. They've opened it up to us. GPS is relatively new. Back when I was in the Coast Guard, we didn't have GPS. It's been around since about the 80s. The military used it, started sharing it with civilians, and the first part of the 90s. Yeah, so GPSs are fairly new to us, okay? So I've talked about a few features with this radio. This takes the place of this. This is a GPS from about 15 years ago, right? Very nice. But this does the same thing, even better. How many of you seen one of these? This does the same thing. So I didn't mean to do that. This is a squelch. And this is a lock button. Squelch is, it's like, I think it's probably round. Right? And then you adjust that with these left and right, up and down. until the stops, right? And then you adjust your volume. Left? Okay, I'll make it. Okay, so that's how to hail another vessel, okay? So one thing with these radios, actually, while I'm doing that, I'm going to pass. Monty brought a radio in. It's just like mine. The only thing with this radio in, doesn't have its MMSI number programmed into it. So as soon as you turn it on, it's going to warn you, hey, turn your radio, register your radio, right? Otherwise, hear that beeping? That's equivalent to, and now I've got to acknowledge that I did a bad thing by not programming this. Yeah. So I'm going to pass this around. See what it looks like. That's the exact same thing as I have right here. Okay. So the way this antenna works is if it's like this, it's going to radiate this way and this way. That's useless. You want the radio antenna up like this. Okay. You don't want it here. You want it here. I'm off, but here's how I'm going to simulate a call. I'm going to push the button. I'm on channel 16. I'm on high power. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Tide Race Kayak, Tide Race Kayak, Tide Race Kayak. Over. The Coast Guard will respond. Tide Race Kayak, Coast Guard Station, Portland. What's the nature of the call? Okay. That's very formal. Realistically, mayday, mayday, mayday. Coast Guard. I'm a kayaker, kayaking with another person, and I think they may have just had a heart attack. My location is yada, yada, yada. That works. You don't have to be, you can get on channel 16 and say, help, help. My kayaking buddy just had a heart attack. That works. You can get so hung up on this protocol, right? You can even have this on a card in your life vest. So now you have one hand on your radio, you're grabbing your glasses, you're looking at this and you're like, okay, how do I do this? Okay, so let's see, mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Tide Race Kayak at position, yada, yada, yada. I've got a paddler having chest pains. I need a vessel to come and help me out really quick. There are 5 people in my pod. This is an 18-foot kayak, Tide Race Kayak. Over. I wait 10 seconds. Okay. I don't want to, and the key is then you let go of your button. If you don't let go of your button, nothing happens, man. You're screwed. Okay. So only hold the button when you're talking. Wait about a half a second when you're finished, and then let go. Let people respond. We don't do this very often. And very common, in my experience, people have the death grip on that power button, right? And all communication is shot. So practice with your radio off. Practice during your radio checks, right? So having your radio vertical like this at about a 45, speak slowly and very clearly, right? Some folks will say, oh, you've got to use the, what is the phonetic alphabet? Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. Yeah, right. Just speak clearly, right? And if they don't understand, you're not giving them your vessel number, right? Just speak slowly. You won't have to go through all that. Okay, another one of our messages is called Pon Pon. So Mayday is life-threatening. That's like, oh, I'm getting cold. No, you know, I need to tow in. Pon Pon is a level down. Mayday is you are in danger. There's immediate danger to life if something doesn't happen really quick, okay? Can anyone give me a situation that might be a Mayday call? I'm sorry? A man overboard might be, yes, yeah. Yeah. Hard on a kayak though, but yeah. So if someone capsized, I wouldn't call a Mayday, right?
Against the rocks.
Yes.
And I'm thrashing.
I'm thrashing, yes, I'm getting hypothermic. Yeah, that would be, they're gonna bring out a helicopter for you, right? There you go. Yeah, yeah. So the next level down is called a pon-pon, pan-pan, whatever you want to call it, right? We're not gonna get picky about that. Again, you repeat it a few times, pon-pon, pon-pon, pon-pon. You don't do it on channel 9, you do it on channel 16. That gets everyone's attention and you would be on your high power. Okay, same thing. You would use it for emergencies where there's no life or vessels not threatened. Okay, and how you would address this is you would say something like pon-pon, pon-pon, pon-pon. All stations, all stations, all stations. Then you do the same thing that you did with your Mayday call, okay? And again, you can just use normal everyday language. They're not going to fault you for that. You're not going to get reprimanded for not following the proper protocol. Securite is something we don't use very often. I've only had to use it once in my civilian life. It's used for broadcasting safety information. A vessel adrift possibly, right? A buoy that is out, floating logs in a boat channel, right? Yes, sir. You could, yes, you wouldn't be faulted for that. But I would probably get a hold of, let's say, and I've used this before, making a long crossing across a ferry channel. I get a hold of, let's say, Victoria Station or the controlling station for the ferries and let them know that we have 5, in that exact location, we're crossing Trincomalee Channel, right? Heading, and they will, all the ferries in the area will be aware of it as well, okay? Okay, and you can also use it station to station. That's, you would name the station that you're calling. So I would be calling, Oops Party Camp, Oops Party Camp. This is Tide Race Kayak, right? And we'd run channel 69 and we could talk like that, right? Again, you want to keep your conversations. You don't want to talk like you're in a cafe having, brunch with your best bud, but and this is all going to be on our website when this is all done. So you can practice this, okay? I just call myself Tide Race Kayak because if I give the colors, it's red, black, and white. It depends whether it's upside down or not, what color it is. Okay. We had an old kayaking, one of our Oops members, on the hull of his kayak, it said help. So whenever it was upside down, that was pretty cool. Okay, next. Okay, maintenance and battery life. This is key. And please make sure Monty gets his radio back. If you guys do have a radio, I highly recommend this stuff, right? And then fasten to your life jacket with the radio, with the antenna pointing up. Verify your battery is always charged. When it's not on I'm not going kayaking, this is always in my charger, right? And always turned off. When I pull it off, I always make sure that it is indeed off. When I come off of a trip, the first thing I do, even if it's in fresh water, I take it off my life jacket and I dip it in a bucket of fresh water and rinse it. Shake it off, right? And then just let it dry for next time. Don't put it in a dry bag, right? Don't leave it in your life jacket. You're just asking for problems, right? Periodically, you want to unscrew your antenna. Make sure it's properly, look for corrosion. Because if it's corroded, you're not going to get a good signal. That's part of your maintenance. Check that out. And I think you had an external, you had a microphone on yours, or was that a leash? A microphone, okay. So you have to watch the microphones because that can get wrapped around your neck. So you want to, it's not a bad thing, but you just got to be aware of it. Anything that's loose, that's why this is very short. This is attached to my pocket. So I can pull it out like this and use it fine. If I fall in the water, if I capsize, it's still there. I don't have to worry about losing it, right? I'll never know if this floats or not. It does float. I'm gonna take it for their word for it, but not something I'm gonna bother checking. Okay. Battery pack. See if I can pull this off. Well, you can see it right there. That's the battery cover that I'm holding in my left hand. There's a silicone seal around there, and it's very easy to get sand in that seal. And if you get sand in there and it doesn't seal properly, now your battery is going to get wet and it's not going to work. So every year when I check my batteries in August, I pull this out and I clean it with a Q-tip and I lube it with zipper lube and then put it back on every year. And I clean this up with an alcohol swab. Make sure everything is tight, everything is functional. This radio is 10 years old. Works like a champ. Okay. So rinse with fresh water. I made the mistake when I first got into kayaking. I thought it was cool to take all my gear with me, including lights, to the pool practice sessions. Stupid, you know, who knows? Even my radio, the chlorine in the pool is not a friend of these things. That could be one of the reasons why one of my radios failed prematurely. Okay. Always make sure it's off when it's not in use. I've also made the mistake of leaving my radio on and the next day going to Freddy's and I hear some of this noise in the background. And it was my VHF radio in the trunk. So these are all lessons learned the hard way. Periodically inspect your batteries, seals, contacts. Perform a radio check every time you're getting on the water with your radio in your life jacket, right? If you're going paddling and you have a radio with you, don't take the attitude, I'm not going to turn it on. I have it with me, but I'm not going to turn it on. That just doesn't make sense. Next. Of course, you can also check the NOAA weather and check the local navigation alerts. Next. So this is that picture, that boat that I was showing you, and the jetty on the right-hand side is where that boat ended up being capsized. And where my replacement passed away. So etiquette and legal considerations: avoid unnecessary chatter on emergency channels. Don't transmit false distress signals. It happens. It never happened in this group, but I know from experience it happens. Know the local regulations and licensing requirements. Like I said, Canada, you're required to have a license, and it costs a little bit of money, okay? You can use it from shore since 2016 in limited applications. It's not to be used as a walkie-talkie, so you shouldn't be getting on there and doing something like breaker, breaker, good buddy. Not for these. Okay. Next. So conclusion takeaway: VHF radios enhance kayaking safety and communications. Know how to use the channels properly. Always check the battery and weather before heading out. Next. Okay. Who's? Good call. No, that's not true. If you look at the wake, he's going forward. Yeah. Yeah. What's that? Oh, okay. So are there any questions? Any questions from in here? Any questions on Zoom? Yeah, go ahead. The only brand I would consider is the Standard Horizon HX 890 BT. Amazon has them for less than $200. And here's the cool thing: How many of you guys paddle with with a cell phone? We all do. Yeah, we always have them. Cell phone is useless on a kayak. It's great for good pictures. Oh yeah, heck yeah. But the thing is, you can take yourself with the HX 890 BT, which is for Bluetooth. It'll allow you to have your phone in a dry bag in your forward compartment, and you can use your cell phone with your VHF radio. VHF, because this floats, it's tethered, doesn't take pictures worth a darn. Oh, and it also, if you want to groove out on some FM radio, you can listen to FM radio on it as well. The other feature that one has is, if some of you are like I am, my memory sucks. It's got a rewind. So if someone is talking and I didn't hear what they said, I can hit a rewind and get it back again. Why is that important? Remember I mentioned line of sight with these things? So if I'm communicating with someone who is 4 miles away, and and I'm communicating with a sailboat that has a 28-foot mast, he's going to be able to communicate with somebody a lot farther than me. If he has that feature on his boat, he can hit the rewind, and if I've given him information, he can repeat that to somebody else, to maybe the Coast Guard. Now, I mentioned line of sight. The Coast Guard has these things called repeater stations, and they're usually up really high. So me communicating with another OOPS member, 5 miles probably tops, maybe 7 on a good day. Less if I'm in the water, 2 miles. But because the Coast Guard antennas are up so high, it goes a whole lot farther, right? Okay. More questions, go ahead. Yes. Good call. Okay. So for an extra 65 to 70 bucks, GPS. Oh, at the Marine, West Marine will have them. They've got a few of them in stock. I was actually there 2 weeks ago. About 250, 260 bucks. How many waypoints does this radio have? A bunch. I'm thinking like 60, a bunch. And you can set them up for the frequency that you want. Every 10 seconds, every 5 minutes. So yes. So one thing I want to show you guys with this. Well, go ahead.
How come some features aren't so automated to make this a little easier? Like, why would we even need to turn GPS on and off? This should just be on all the time.
It uses a lot of power. Your power is restricted using GPS. Yeah, so the question is, why do you have the feature of turning the GPS on or off? Because it uses more power with your GPS on, right?
A lot more power?
Like a lot more power. And within the GPS settings, when you go to menu on these radios, it's really good. It's very intuitive. It walks you through everything. You can set the GPS frequency for echo mode. So it's pinging the GPS, turning it on every couple of minutes, as opposed to constant on, right? And then you also want to set your time on these things because it doesn't set it automatically. So like here, we would be a -8 hours Greenwich time, right? So you'd want to set that so you get the right hours, whether you're 24-hour clock or a 12-hour clock. All I can say is when you get one of these radios, play with it. I spend hours, sometimes instead of reading at night, I just take this to bed with me. It's a sad, sad life, I know. But yeah, I've honestly done that more than once. Dude, you haven't lived. Yes, online? What's the question? Oh, please type in your question online. So Chris and I have actually used our VHF radios on paddles before, where I'm maybe running sweep. Yeah, it works really well. And I just call her Kayak Chris. Yes. 11 hours. Yeah. You got to charge it or have a spare battery. right? So I always, and people who camp with me know that, I have a solar charger always, and I have a battery pack, so I can always charge this. And then if I'm not using, if I'm someplace like on a river where I'm not gonna need my GPS, I leave my GPS off and I get more. But yeah, and there's also a car charger that comes with this. So you can do that. Is that it? Any questions? Chris didn't say anything? No? Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, was that awesome or what? I'm gonna go out and buy a radio. So I just want to let you all know that this meeting has been recorded, and if you want to go back and review, it will be online in the next few days or so. Give it a couple weeks. We're all volunteers here. And it will be on the website. The next meeting is going to be March 26th, same time, same place here at the Lucky Lab. The subject matter is going to be Meet Your TOs, your trip organizers. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I think we're all good to go. Thank you so much, Marty. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.